2024 election. Based on analysis of the entrance poll, ABC News is now projecting former President Donald Trump will win Iowa tonight.
And that's why this is a Republican Party problem more than it is the problem of one man and his leadership.
Doesn't that tie together the...
The Iowa caucus yesterday happened with a shocking and surprising result, said no one. Also, so many insurrections. One at the Capitol over the weekend. Did you hear about it? And New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey specifically, gives 16-year-olds the right to vote. And maybe we'll get to the airplane thing today. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Joe Bob. Welcome to the Dingy Bunker. Fun stuff going on today, but also just kind of like, I don't know, it felt like a blah-ish type of day. And by blah, I mean like yesterday during the Iowa caucuses, or watching the Iowa caucus watching the voting results from the Iowa caucus come back, it wasn't at all surprising or shocking. Kind of like, and I don't want to say like, oh, I told you so, because again, guessing that result was not a heavy lift by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, there is a component of, I don't know, rolling your eyes and kind of going, yeah, this is how things go, and knowing how many people are saying, well, it could go this way, it could go that way. No, that's not the case. But in case you missed it, somehow, I don't know if you don't have the internet at your house, in which case, how are you watching this? Trump won the Iowa caucus last night decisively. And by decisively, I mean he won every single county except for one. And I don't even know if that's entirely accurate as of this moment. That was just the most recent thing that I had seen. It's possible that he won every single county, considering the decisiveness of the Trump victory last night. Now, that shouldn't be surprising or shocking to anyone, but I don't know. That's just how it is. Now, there were a couple things in there that I do want to bring up. Yesterday, I don't know if you were watching the football game yesterday, but yesterday, during the middle of the broadcast on Monday Night Football, the playoff game between the Bucs and the Eagles, at halftime, they had a news break with ABC News. Now, I'm not against news breaks in the middle of sports shows, I guess, but it was a little odd that they jumped in with like the full team coverage that was apparently live over on ABC News. David Muir, who headlines their big ABC News national news coverage, was there saying, well, here's what's happening in the election results. But what I thought was fascinating is the second thing that they decided to go to in this news break in the middle of a national football game that a lot of people were watching. They decide to give you a statistic that to me is freaking meaningless and also so lacking in context and conversation. It's damaging to not only their side if you're looking at things in a more objective scope, but also damaging to the country if you're trying to push a narrative of divisiveness. And I said, just watch this. This is again aired in the middle of an NFL playoff game during the Iowa caucus. He announces who probably wins the caucus, and then the thing that they go to is just like, dude, you know there's an agenda and a motive there. Check this out.
As attention immediately turned to the New Hampshire primary next. Based on entrance polls tonight, voters were asked if they believe, did President Biden legitimately win the election? 65% of GOP voters in Iowa said no, he did not legitimately win. 31% of GOP voters in Iowa said yes, he did. They also said the top issues for them in going to the Iowa caucuses, the economy and immigration.
Yeah. Just say those two things. Again, I don't want to be like a nitpicky, complainy type person all of the time, but the problem is when you have the media just so in the pocket of one particular side, rather than immediately after the announcement say, all right, Donald Trump looks to be the projected winner of Iowa in the Iowa caucus and the Republican presidential primary, and the main issues are immigration, the economy, like he said. But then in the middle, to wedge oh, and look, the majority of Iowans don't think Joe Biden was legitimately elected. What is that doing there? What good does that serve other than dividing people more because of the overt lack of context? What does that mean? Right? Outside of the why did you need to put that there, you have to ask the question, what does that even, what does that question mean? Did Joe Biden legitimately win? Because you can answer that question both ways. And the people that say, well, I don't know, no, it's yes or no, that is dumb. That is a dumb person looking for a dumb answer. If you want an intelligent answer that isn't yes or no, don't ask a stupid question that results in a, was Joe Biden legitimately elected? Did he get more votes than Donald Trump? Yeah, I think so. Generally speaking, yes, I do. Was the election transparent as it needed to be, and did laws unnecessarily change to react around COVID? Yeah, also that is true. So what do I answer there? What does legitimate mean? If the legitimacy is, well, he got more votes than Donald Trump, sure, then yeah, he's legitimately elected president. If legitimate means, were all of the structures in place working and designed to work to best benefit the people that were voting for them? No. No, probably not a lot. And that's before you even get into the mailbox drop stuff, which I don't really pay much attention to that. I'm strictly looking at the structural components of, were all the laws that were put in place necessary, and who did that benefit? Pretty clearly, it benefited the side that they wanted it to benefit, which was Joe Biden. So when you ask the question, was Joe Biden legitimately elected? The answer is both yes and no. And any reasonable person could come to both of those conclusions depending on how you define legitimately. So, the question on its face is stupid, but then to have it the very first thing, Donald Trump will win Iowa. By the way, 60% of Iowans don't think Joe Biden was legitimately elected. What are you trying to do, if not sow seeds of doubt and division into the country? What a stupid, stupid thing for ABC to do. And I'm not, I don't know, David Muir is clearly a lefty type of guy if you've watched his news hour, half hour, much. But at the same time, you know, he tries, I guess. It looks like he tries. But even then, you can't escape the we're right and you're wrong, you dumb Republicans. It just doesn't go away, especially on that big of a stage. What a weird, weird thing. I want to get to this, too, because I thought this was fascinating. And interesting. And speaking of sowing seeds of division, everyone on this show's clear and obvious favorite, Rachel Maddow, was on MSNBC talking about how we need to, you know what? So wow, I realized that was a lot of trains of thoughts that were connecting and not necessarily being disseminated in a correct and perceivable fashion. Matt Walsh's What is a Woman movie was hilarious and also incredibly informative, because being able to define clear and obvious terms is the bedrock of a civilization. I think we need to make a similar documentary of what is a fascist. I would like to know if somebody could give me, I know what a fascist is. Right? The dictionary definition of a fascist is an authoritarian leader that prioritizes crushing any sort of dissent wherever it may be. That is the dictionary definition of a fascist. So when I ask the question, what is a fascist? That's the answer. But if you give an answer that isn't that, then are you talking about fascism, or are you just using that word to scare people who also don't know what the word fascism means? Here's Rachel Maddow talking about how the evil, evil fascist Republicans are doing what Democrats have been doing for the last several years in the Biden administration. Watch this and we will discuss.
The big picture takeaway from that, and I don't mean to be, again, too dark, as you said, on this, but it is not, if we are worried about the rise of authoritarianism in this country, we are worried about potential rise of fascism in this country, if we're worried about our democracy falling to an authoritarian and potentially fascist form of government, the leader who is trying to do that is part of that equation. But people wanting that is a much bigger part of that equation. Right. But there is an authoritarian movement inside Republican politics that isn't being bamboozled by Trump. They are pushing Trump to get more and more extreme, because the more extreme things he says, the more they adhere to him. And that is coming from a very large proportion of the American right that adheres to the Republican Party. And that's why this is a Republican Party problem more than it is the problem of one man and his leadership.
Doesn't that tie together the...
If fascism and authoritarianism, take two. If fascism and authoritarianism is you must do this, or you have to do this, or you need to recognize this, I would ask, which party is pushing that sort of thing? And neither side has no authoritarians. That's just the nature of humanity. Both sides have people that say you need to do this and you need to do that. But just as an encompassing majority or whole, so to speak, which side is saying you have to call men women, or you have to expand your racial quotas, or you have to get a shot? Which, again, comes back to the age-old question of this entire show. This show should be called Dumb or Lying, because those are the only two options. Is it ineptitude? Is it oversight? Is it inability to recognize the plank in one's own eye? Or is it just flat-out lying? I think Rachel Maddow, I think I've said this multiple times, I would love to hang out with her. I think she's probably pretty smart, which is a problem because that eliminates the possibility of her being too dumb to understand what she's saying. Therefore, it means that she's lying, which is, it's a thing in and of itself. Regardless, I think a hang would be fun. But at the end of the day, if enough people believe something that is objectively just not accurate, where does that leave us? You want to talk about sowing division? The majority of it is on MSNBC, CNN, all of your network news. There was a question that Trump got asked, I think on Brett Baer's town hall with him, where Brett Baer was like, well, what do you say to the people who don't want you in office because of the chaos or the controversy that surrounds you constantly? And Trump said, well, it was coming from them. I was just, does he say some things that are a little bit over the top? Yeah, but they're words. And again, I'm not necessarily a fan of the over-the-top rhetoric that Trump sometimes espouses, or the insults, or the not being able to hold his tongue on stuff. I'm not a huge fan of that. But at the same time, they're words. Who was the one that did that whole years-long investigation into Russian collusion? That was chaotic, but who caused that? Who was the one that impeached the guy over probably a legitimate investigation we're now finding into Joe Biden and Hunter Biden? Well, it was the other side. So in terms of who's causing the chaos, and Trump answered it this way, said, they're the ones doing it. Yeah, he can be a little bit over the top sometimes. And again, I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a huge fan of him being as Trumpy as he is. But also, all of the chaos came from the response, not necessarily the guy. But that is what it is. Vivek also dropped out, in case you were unaware of that. The AP had an article the other day that I didn't bring on here, but I should have, that said, Iowa's winter blast could make an unprecedented unrepresentative way of picking presidential nominees even more so. The cold disenfranchises people. Look, if you don't want to go caucus, nobody forced anybody to go caucus. Well, they should move it. No, it's just here. We're doing it now. I think that's the response to people. You should just roll your eyes and consistently say, that's stupid. Let's see. Candace Owens also tweeted, I live in a country where I'm stressed out about falling asleep during the Iowa caucus for fear of waking up and learning that Joe Biden somehow won. I just thought that was funny. Anyways, give me 1 second. Sorry, it doesn't matter. I want to move on to this because I think this is interesting and funny, and I probably dove a little bit too far into it when talking about it. But this is going on in Newark, New Jersey. 16-year-olds are allowed to vote for a school board. Now, is that the entirety of the voting? No. They are not allowed to vote for city council. They're not allowed to vote in any of the federal elections. But Newark, New Jersey says 16-year-olds are old enough to vote, and the way that they should vote, or the election they should vote in, is the school board. Now, I feel like I don't need to necessarily go over all of the reasons as to why children voting is not a good idea. I think that should be pretty well understood. So, I decided to take a different approach to coming at this. Okay, cool, fine. Let's just say there's a movement out there that wants 16-year-olds to vote, and the whole idea was 16-year-olds get the vote, and therefore we're all better for it. Okay, cool. Who's pushing that? How did it get to become active legislation that got passed? Well, because of this. This website is the Vote 16 New Jersey page. It is Vote 16, the mission to lower the voting age to 16 in local New Jersey elections. Okay? And again, we are bypassing the whole idea of it's stupid, because I think everybody understands the obvious reasons as to why it's stupid. Personally speaking, and I feel like I get a lot of flack for this, the voting age should probably be 25. The only reason that it can't be 25 is that people volunteer for the military at 18. But anyways, that's besides the point. Back to this. The legislation that was voted on at the city council level, the resolution, or the whatever they called it over there in Newark, New Jersey, was promoted by Vote16NJ.org. Now, this is Vote16NJ.org that has, again, the mission of lowering the voting age to 16 in local New Jersey elections. Let us decide our future. Okay, that's all well and good. But here's the thing. Let's scroll down to the bottom of this page. They've got all of their little fun statistics and all that sort of stuff. Do you notice anything missing from the bottom of this, this particular page? Yeah, it's the campaign disclaimer. If you're going to push active legislation in any election, whether it's federal, state, local, you have to declare where your money is coming from. Now, clearly, this website wasn't free. There's no, well, even if it was free to the kids, it's donated somewhere. This website doesn't exist magically. So in other words, somebody had to pay for it by way of either donation or monetary donation to somebody who is actually paying for it. Which would necessitate then a campaign finance disclaimer. And since I'm not seeing a campaign finance disclaimer, the 16-year-olds that are running this site are in violation of New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission rules. That might actually be a pretty big deal. Now, let's go to the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission website and type in, let's see, Vote 16NJ. Because if, obviously, they're registered as a political committee, a PAC, that should be in their thing. Oh, shoot, your request returned no results. Uh-oh. That means that the 16-year-olds running this shadow dark money campaign are in violation again. Not only is their disclaimer not on their website, they are not filing the appropriate paperwork to legally be allowed to do what it is that they're doing. So they're in violation of not only the local New Jersey Elections Law Enforcement Commission rules, but they're also in violation of the state's. Uh-oh. I think I found more problems, though, which is not good for these kids. Let's go to their About page. On the About page, I don't necessarily want to show those kids because I know they're underage, but they're on the website, so it is what it is. They have this paragraph here that says, the Institute advocates for systematic reform that is once transformative, achievable in state that, oh my gosh, that is at once transformative. Achievable in the state and replicable in communities across the nation. Oh no. I think that naturally means their plan is to go federal. And if any active legislation pops up in any of the federal areas, they would also be in violation of, one, that state's particular election finance office, commission, but also possibly the FEC, which is a federal crime. Oh no, these kids are in for it. Now, obviously, I don't want to prosecute children for federal elections campaign finance violations. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that if children want to participate in something, I'm all about them learning about it. Like this. This is a learning thing. They put together a website. That website got active legislation passed. Good for them. Now, the legislation, obviously, I don't agree with, but congrats on learning. The problem is, if you want to be treated like adults, you have to face the consequences of adults, which would be several campaign violence and finance infractions and violations, not only at the local level, but at the state level, possibly in multiple different state levels. And, geez, does that make it a RICO crime? Is that racketeering? I don't actually know. But the bottom line here is that it's okay for kids to learn about things and try to take proactive measures. But adults can't indulge the idiocy of the young unless the young is willing to accept the consequences of adulthood, which I'm not for. Part of being an adult is curbing the behavior of people who don't know any better, which in this case are kids in Newark, New Jersey. So, I don't know. And of course we admitted all of the arguments as to why 16-year-olds voting is dumb, but again, those arguments don't necessarily need to be made over and over and over again. I just thought, I don't know if that was interesting or not. I thought it would be fun to go a complete different direction and talk about all the campaign finance violations that these kids have made. Let's move on. Let's wrap it up and move on. So much insurrection. Dang it, man. Ever since the country learned the word insurrection, or at least it became part of the national repertoire of language, insurrections have been happening all over the place and so frequently. Another insurrection happened over the weekend in the Capitol. I'm going to play you a video of some insurrectionists who are Palestinian protesters or protesting on behalf of Palestine for some reason at the White House doing the whole insurrection. It's caught on video, it's live, and nobody faced any sort of consequences. Watch this and we will discuss why consequences need to be met for protesters breaking the law, or else it benefits no one, including those protesters. Watch this. let's break that down. I think a bunch of people would likely say, well, that's not an insurrection. Okay, well, if what people are being charged of, which constitutes as an insurrection, is disrupting the proceeding of official business of Congress or of the administrative branch or of the judicial branch, for that matter, then how is this not? Well, they were just shaking the fence. Okay, well, what are you trying to do while break through the fence? What happens if one of those links in the fence breaks? What happens if the gate just swings wide open and now the protesters, rioters, are face to face with law enforcement? What actually happens? Let's just say they continue to move forward and law enforcement arrests them, which they should arrest them way before that, but let's just say hypothetically that's the case in this particular instance. You don't get to go to someone's home with a battering ram and hit the door a couple times, and as long as the door doesn't break, you're totally fine and justified in doing so. No. If you're going to someone's door with a battering ram and hitting the door with that battering ram, the obvious conclusion is that your intention is to break into the door. So why would that not apply also here, where people are slamming the gates of the White House, in my view, clearly attempting to break into the White House. To do what? I don't actually know. But it can't be assumed that, well, they're just out there causing a ruckus for their cause, because that doesn't help anybody, and we'll get to that further in a few seconds. So if people are rattling a gate, looking to get in, because that's the only thing that you can assume, what are they then attempting to do? And if you can come up with what the attempt is, you have to charge it as if they did that thing. I've never understood why an attempted crime isn't treated the exact same as actually committing the crime, because the only difference is your ability to commit the crime. Your intention to commit the crime is just as bad as you doing the crime. So in this particular instance, they are clearly attempting to break through these gates. Argument can't really be made otherwise, because especially if the gates had broken in, you don't get to say, whoa, no, we weren't actually trying to do that. No. In the same way that you can't go up to someone's home with a battering ram, hit the door a couple times, and as long as the door stays closed, you're totally good. But if it breaks open, you go, no, I wasn't intending to break in. That doesn't work. Okay, well, what are you attempting to do? And whatever it is that you're attempting to do, we should charge you to the fullest extent of the law, under the assumption that you did the thing that you did, were attempting to do. And yet, did anybody hear about any of this? But going on to the idea of protesters not getting prosecuted for anything, in Oakland over the weekend, I don't know if you saw this, protesters, this is from, I think I forget which newspaper this is from. Protesters over the weekend calling for a ceasefire in Gaza descended on the port of Oakland and shut down operations for hours on Sunday. More than 1,000 chanted for Palestine to be free and calling for the U.S. to stop aid to Israel. They disrupted the operations of a port, and so far, I have not found any evidence of anyone being arrested. Here's why I think you need to be held accountable for breaking laws while protesting. It has been too often that we've seen people be able to shut down ports in Oakland and no repercussions faced. That's people's livelihoods. There's a quote here. Let me read this really quick. Robert Bernardo said, any disruption to our maritime operation affects everyone. Port of Oakland's Director of Communications, Robert Bernardo, says, operational impacts by demonstrators would prevent the timely flow of international commerce, including medical supplies, food products, auto manufacturing, technology parts, just to name a few. Also, nearly 100,000 local jobs depend on the port operations, including the livelihoods of truck operators, dock workers, and warehouse workers, and their families. So, people who are protesting disrupt an operation that affects 100,000 people, and nothing happens? I think the argument that is going to be made from the other side is, well, they're peaceful protesters. Yeah, you can be a peaceful protester, but if you break the law, which I would define as affecting other people's livelihoods, then you still have to suffer the consequences of breaking that law. And what happens when you don't is bad for both sides. If nobody suffers any consequences for breaking the law and stopping the Port of Oakland, for example, in this particular case, all of those people are out whatever they couldn't do. Those companies are out dollar numbers that they paid people just to sit around because they couldn't continue their operations. 100,000 jobs, according to this port guy, were affected. So those people suffer. And on the other side, if nobody is facing any consequences for the protesters, it doesn't really get any attention. And if your goal as a protester isn't just to riot in the streets, because a lot of people are looking for excuses to riot in the streets, but if your actual goal is to make significant change in the policy and the minds of people that would create said policy, then you're not benefited by nobody facing any consequences either, because at the end of the day, this kind of just washed over. Nothing changed other than the disadvantagement that you set upon the people that work at the port and the people that depend on the port. Nobody's ideas were changed. In the 60s, and 70s for that matter, when people were protesting and got arrested for sit-ins, I don't know how much it moved the needle, but it at least did something in line with the protesters getting their message out and being able to say, look at how mistreated we were, regardless of whether or not they were mistreated. It helped their message and maybe even convinced some people because it got more airtime, because people were sitting in jail for sit-ins in libraries and colleges. That actually did something. But when nobody faces any consequences for breaking the law, not only does it hurt the people who you're harming, what a dumb sentence. Not only does it hurt those people, it also doesn't advance your cause anymore because there's no attention paid to it and nobody actually cares. This massive protest in Oakland and the insurrection at the White House over the weekend did not move the needle one iota. But if people breaking the law actually are held accountable, one, it helps the people that are being hurt by them breaking the law, and two, maybe it would even advance your point a little bit. Just letting people break the law whenever they want to break the law doesn't help anyone, and it doesn't benefit any individual, any group at all. Got thrown off a little bit. Let me hold on. Let me pause this really quick so we don't have the same problem that we had yesterday. Boom. Nice. I got a phone call that has not. I don't know. Got thrown for a loop early in the program, so got distracted a little bit. That's probably why. I don't know. Not that I'm making excuses for being rambly, but thinking about too many other things. But that'll do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media platforms. Just type in JOBOB, pretty much anywhere. You'll be able to find me: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all the above. What am I doing? We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. God bless America. Nope. All right. Cool. We're still on.